Facts and trivia about the Soccer World Cups. Zaire and the threat of the dictator. In the 1974 World Cup in Germany, the Zaire national team experienced one of the most surreal and darkest moments that tournament has ever produced. Before facing Brazil, they had already lost 9-0 to Yugoslavia. And according to reports, the dictator Mobutu sent a clear message to the players. If they lost to Brazil by more than 3 goals, they would not return home alive. And you know what's ironic? They lost exactly 3-0. That's what I call luck. Imagine playing a match with your life at stake. What would you do? The most repeated final, the final that has been played the most times in World Cup history, is Germany versus Argentina, with a total of 3 times. In 1986, Argentina won. In 1990, Germany won. And in 2014, Germany won. The record stands at 2-1, the match between 2 Germanys. In the 1974 World Cup, Germany played against Germany. That's literally what happened. West Germany against East Germany. The country was split in 2 after World War II, and they faced each other in the group stage of that tournament. Under heavy police protection, due to fear of a terrorist attack, East Germany won 1-0 against the team that would later become world champion in that same tournament. The only match between 2 halves of the same country in World Cup history, you could say that Germany won one of its stars with its secondary account. The champion's curse. There's something that happens in football every so often. The defending champion arrives at the next World Cup and has a terrible time. On 6 occasions, the reigning champion didn't make it past the group stage. Italy in 1950, Brazil in 1966, France in 2002, Italy again in 2010, Spain in 2014, and Germany in 2018. But the worst of all was France. In 2002, they arrived in Korea and Japan as the absolute favorites and lost 2 matches, drew 1, and didn't score a single goal. Eliminated in the group stage with just 1 point without scoring a single goal. The worst defending champion in history, the first World Cup without any draws. The 1930 World Cup in Uruguay, the first in history, didn't have a single draw. None. Every match ended with a winner. It was also the only World Cup without any qualifying rounds. Teams were directly invited, and it was the only time in history with more American than European teams, as some European countries refused to cross the Atlantic to play. Uruguay won the final against Argentina 4-2 and became the first world champion in history. The oldest and the youngest player. The youngest player to score a goal in a World Cup is Pelé, at 17 years and 239 days old. But the oldest player to play in a World Cup match was the Egyptian goalkeeper Essam El Hadari, who played in Russia 2018 at 45 years and 161 days old. Before him, that record was held by the Colombian Farid Mondragon, who also has another interesting fact. He played his first World Cup in 1994, and his next participation was in 2014, 20 years later. The longest gap between World Cup appearances by the same player. The only Olympic goal in a World Cup happened in the 1962 World Cup in Chile. Colombia drew 4-4 with the Soviet Union, and that draw is the highest scoring tie in World Cup history. But something unique happened in that match. Marcos Call scored an Olympic goal, directly from a corner kick, without anyone else touching the ball. Colombia is the only national team to have scored an Olympic goal in World Cup history, winning without actually existing. Austria qualified for the 1938 World Cup in France, but 3 months before the tournament began, Nazi Germany annexed it, and Austria ceased to exist as a country. With that, their national team also ceased to exist. They were forced to withdraw from a World Cup they had qualified for because the country they represented was no longer on the map. The Austrian painter doing his thing. Bulgaria, and their 17 winless matches. Bulgaria took part in several World Cups as a completely lackluster team. Between 1962 and 1994, they played 17 consecutive World Cup matches without winning a single one. 17 matches without a single victory. But in 1994, out of nowhere, Bulgaria had their fairy tale. They reached the semifinals in the United States. From not winning for decades to being among the top 4 in the world, that kind of story only happens in the World Cup. Brazil and their perfect streak. Brazil has the longest unbeaten run in World Cup history. After losing the famous Battle of Bern against Hungary in 1954, Brazil didn't lose again in a World Cup until 1966. During that period, they won 2 World Cups, in 1958 and 1962, and went 13 matches without losing. They also have the longest consecutive winning streak, 11 in a row, including all 7 matches they won in the 2002 World Cup and 4 more in 2006, before losing to France in the quarterfinals. What Brazil did is crazy. That's why they're the greatest national team in the world. The own goal and the penalty, both by the same player, Manuel Rosas, a Mexican player, has 2 historic records that no one can take away from him. First, he scored the first own goal in World Cup history in Mexico's loss to Chile in Uruguay 1930. In that tournament, he scored the World Cup's first penalty goal in a loss to Argentina. The same player also made the first own goal and first penalty in history. He seemed determined to claim those records. Switzerland and its contradictions. This team holds many seemingly contradictory records. On one hand, it's the only team that finished a World Cup campaign without conceding a single goal. That was in Germany, 2006. On the other hand, it holds the record for the most consecutive matches conceding a goal. 22 matches in a row between 1934 and 1994. It was also the only national team to finish last in 2 consecutive World Cups. Chile 1962 and England 1966, and they played in the highest scoring match in history, the 7-5 match against Austria in 1954. Switzerland was at the center of all that, including the top scorer in a single match. Oleg Salenko of Russia scored a record 5 goals in a single World Cup match during a 6-1 win over Cameroon. In the 1994 World Cup in the United States, 5 goals in a single match, a record that has remained untouched for decades. An additional fun fact, Russia did not make it past the group stage. That year, the tournament's top scorer shared the title with Hristo Stoichkov from Bulgaria, and his team was eliminated in the first round. North Korea and the interrupted broadcast. North Korea qualified for the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, and the government chose to broadcast the matches live nationwide. The first match was against Brazil. They lost 2-1, let's say it was relatively respectable. The second match was against Portugal. They lost 7-0, a total humiliation. So the government interrupted the live broadcast and the match was never aired live in the country. North Korean citizens saw it days later, but clearly edited. The only country that gave up hosting a World Cup, Colombia, was designated as the host of the 1986 World Cup and gave up. The president then thought the country couldn't afford the costs. The tournament was scheduled. Did he invest the money elsewhere or steal it? In Latin America, anything is possible. So Mexico took over the organization instead and hosted its second World Cup. Colombia is the only country in history that was designated as the host of a World Cup and decided to give that honor back before organizing it. The day, finals data, and the collective record, the Netherlands lost 3 World Cup finals without winning any. 1974, 1978, and 2010. No other country has lost more finals without ever winning the title. Germany lost 4 finals, but winning 4 as well is a pretty fair price. But the Netherlands wasn't as lucky, so the full dishonor is theirs. The first December World Cup, Qatar 2022, was the first World Cup in history played in November and December. All the previous ones had been played in June and July. The change was made because the host country's extreme summer temperatures made it impossible to play safely. It was also the World Cup with the longest wait since Brazil 1950, if we count the gap between consecutive editions in terms of the actual calendar. This was the first edition where only the host had a guaranteed spot, without Qatar as host. That year would have ended the streak of World Cup debutantes. If you want me to make a part 3, let me know in the comments. If you made it this far, don't leave yet. You have to watch this video I'm showing on the screen. Give it a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.